Than a week from Election Day, is there a reason for Detroiters to make a change in the mayor's office? The challenger, Anthony Adams, is here to make his case. And from the redistricting maps to vaccine mandates, our roundtable is ready to go. Today is Sunday, October 24th, 2021, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. We come to you this morning wondering why debates are so hard to come by these days. Mayor Mike Duggan made it clear he had no intention of debating challenger Anthony Adams. The mayor says it's because Adams has run a hate-filled campaign. Well, Mike Duggan's been around politics a long time. I don't know that he hasn't heard nasty campaign rhetoric before. It looks to many to be yet another page from what's become the incumbent's playbook. We saw it with Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, neither of whom were willing to tangle with John James in their Senate races. And there is clearly sound political strategy at work here. Why give your opponent's campaign any more oxygen than you absolutely have to? Well, and I am clearly in the debate business and am hardly a dispassionate bystander, but it seems to be a fairly healthy exercise for elected leaders to have to defend their record and their future plans against someone who thinks they've got better ones, even if, like Duggan, they mopped up in the primary. Instead, we head to an election day a week from this coming Tuesday without a side-by-side comparison. Anthony Adams, though, did accept our invitation to be here this morning. He'll join me in just a moment. And a little later on, our roundtable will take stock not only of this election, but election days to come through the lens of the new maps put forth by the Redistricting Commission. It's all today on Flashpoint. Well, Anthony Adams is a very familiar face in Detroit civic life. He's been everything from the president of the Detroit School Board to the deputy mayor, but he's got his eye on one office he hasn't held. His is the other name you'll see on the ballot on November 2nd as he hopes to somehow knock off Mike Duggan, who had a frankly prohibitive showing in the primary. But Anthony Adams is my guest today. Anthony, very good to have you. I don't like to spend a lot of time debating debates. The mayor has said that you have been running a campaign that has been, as he put it, 100% hate and divisiveness. But I know you're as disappointed as I am that I don't have you both here.
Well, I certainly have to laugh at this characterization of my campaign, but that's something I would expect. Here he's facing the most qualified candidate he has ever run against. Former executive assistant to the mayor, former deputy mayor, interim director of the water department, president of the Detroit Board of Education, as well as having served as general counsel, eminently qualified to discuss any and every issues impacting the city of Detroit in a responsible manner, I might add.
Well, in your defense, I suppose it's hard to get elected if your campaign slogan is Mike Duggan hasn't been that bad. But I want to start with your chance to skip past hate and divisiveness. Give me an example of something you think Mike Duggan has done well that you would continue in your administration.
Well, I mean, I can't really give him too much credit for anything, quite frankly. You know, he came out of bankruptcy and was given a clean slate to operate the city. Never really had to operate the city under the constraints of previous mayors. And so he had a really one way to do things, which other mayors have not had. And so it's easy to manage in that kind of environment. But we see when the metal meets the road, when you have serious issues impacting housing. You know, he's completely failed to address the housing issue. We continue to lose population in our city. He said that he should be judged by how he retains and grows the population in the city of Detroit. The population has dropped. The only population that's grown in the city is in the central business district, which is comprised primarily of white citizens who moved into the city of Detroit. When you talk about transportation, he's a complete failure. He's actually cutting transportation services in the city where people desperately need transportation services. And then recently, the University of Michigan released a report which said that we have more than 90,000 substandard housing units in the city of Detroit. We have more people renting in the city of Detroit that actually own their homes. The Detroit Future Cities report said that we lost 11 middle-income neighborhoods. So how can I give him credit for anything when the metrics of how you judge his performance have been miserable?
Well, so much for skipping past divisiveness then. Anthony, you've been around elections.
But that's not divisive, though. This is...
You can't find one thing that you think he's done well. Now, I don't want to take up. I don't want to be put in the position of taking up the mayor's case. He's worked hard on mortgage. He created the Detroit home mortgage program. We've knocked down a lot of these old dilapidated houses. He doesn't get any credit for any of that.
Well, that's just doing your job. I mean, when you talk about getting credit, what are you doing transformationally in order to make and improve the quality of life in the city? We still rank last or next to last with respect to income of our citizens. We still rank high in the area of crime. When I'm talking about bread and butter issues and what you're supposed to do transformally, I don't think he's done a good job.
Well,
but I'm not here to really talk about what he hasn't done. I'm here to tell you about my vision to make a city of Detroit that works for everyone. That's a city that's inclusive.
In fact, let's dig into what your plans are. You have said that the crime problem in Detroit is very connected to poverty. I don't think there's any doubt. There's no getting around that. But that's a long-term answer. What do you do immediately to try to stem crime in Detroit?
Well, one of the issues is that we spend more than $3 billion over the last 8 years fighting crime, and we still have crime at all-time record levels. And so why can we not do anything differently? Why can't we be transformative in terms of intervening and talking with our at-risk youth, with people who are in our community that are committing crime? We know that a major driver of crime in our city is lack of education, lack of opportunities, lack of job skill and training programs. Why not we are not being proactive, going out into the community, talking with these folks and getting them into program, and maybe we have to actually provide them with a stipend so that they aren't dabbling in crime while we're trying to help them get their lives together. We've got to do something differently. Clearly, the basic reliance upon green light technology has failed because it's a reactive strategy. What I've been advocating for is we got to be proactive. We got to go out in the community. We have to reach out to people that are at risk in committing crimes to see if we can do something different in their lives to help them become better citizens. What do we have to lose?
You were, of course, a part of the. You were not a part of the parade of indictments and prison sentences, but you were a part of the Kwame Kilpatrick administration, one that did lasting and deep damage to. Hang on, I'll get there. But that administration did lasting and deep damage to the city. So how do you convince voters that you're not a return to what was an ugly past?
All they can do is, first of all, Kwame Kilpatrick, his life was what it was. He served his sentence. He's moved on in his life. Detroiters need to move on with their lives as well. What I'm saying is this: when you look at my record and what I've been involved in and what I've done, I was not involved or implicated in any of that madness, which speaks volumes to the level of integrity and transparency that I have. And when they talk about return to those days, all we need to do is look at what's going on in council now. Look at all of the investigations that are surrounding, the current mayor's office with contracts revolving demolition and things of that nature.
Yeah.
People act as if this environment today has been so free of everything. And I'm saying, you got to look at what's going on now. You have to look at my track record and what I have not been involved in, and then you make your determination based on that.
We have a couple of council members that have been in trouble or are currently in trouble. A lot of this seems to circulate around, yes, contracts, but also towing. What do you do to clean up things that remain where you see ethical problems remaining?
Well, I think what we have to do is we first of all have to have people who believe in total transparency, which this administration has not been. They're probably one of the most secretive administrations that we ever had. You also have to put people in place who actually have integrity and have gone through the mill and have come out unscathed in that process, which I have. You also have to create processes which eliminate the impact or influence of money in these things. A major driver and determinant force in corruption in the city of Detroit is the fact that contracts and political pay-for-play is very prevalent still here in the city of Detroit. If we aren't working and aspiring for an ethical environment, and if we don't have an ethical approach to government from the top, then it seeps down onto the bottom and infects the body politic of what goes on here in the city of Detroit.
Anthony, something that I have not heard you address, but I'm sure you've been asked before, maybe I just haven't heard it, but I think it's a critical issue. Right now, the city of Detroit lags much of the rest of the state on COVID vaccine rates. What would you do to get more Detroiters set up to fight COVID-19?
Well, I think the first thing we should have done is we should have used that opportunity, the time period between when COVID hit and when we were waiting on a vaccine, to really talk about how we get people healthy in the city of Detroit. There was no conversation in the city about that. We had the opportunity to talk about healthy food programs, eliminating the disparity in healthcare, and then using young influencers. We're using people that are too old to influence the people who we need to get to. if the population of people that we need to get to are young people in our city, then we should have been using much more younger influencers to talk about that. And then you also have to bring in folk who understand the culture, understand the climate, and how we build the connection between preventative aspects of healthcare and how we get people actually healthy in our community. I think they missed a royal opportunity to really address the overall lack of healthcare access in our city, lack of positive food options. How do we get people healthy in the city? And I think they missed that opportunity.
Anthony, as you know, I always run out of time long before I run out of questions. I'm really grateful, though, for you being here. Good luck the rest of the way in the campaign, and we'll see you again on a future edition of Flashpoint.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You bet. We come back, we'll bring in our roundtable, ask them about the debate situation, too. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
You've got enough to think about maintaining. Good thing the all-new 2022 Volkswagen Taos has a lower cost of maintenance than Honda CR-V. Come into your Volkswagen dealer today and lease the all-new 2022 Taos S4 Motion for just $229 a month.
NFL fans, hungry for a big win this week? With DraftKings, bet $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and if they do, you win $200 in free bets. Winner, winner, chicken dinner, baby. I could go for some chicken. That actually sounds pretty good. Anyway, download the DraftKings app. Sign up with the promo code, bet $5 to win $200, and make it rain with an official sports betting partner of the NFL.
Purpose gives us meaning and helps us to put one foot in front of the other.
These transitions in your life are opportunities to find new purpose, new direction in your life. People who are improving their purpose start living bigger lives. If purpose were a pill, this would be a really important drug.
It's nice to know your blind spot can be protected. Blind Spot Monitor, standard on all 2021 Volkswagen SUVs, unlike all Honda or Subaru SUVs. Come into your Volkswagen dealer today and lease the sophisticated and capable 2021 Tiguan S4 Motion for just $279 a month.
The heart and soul of the city are the people, don't you know? From the corner hot dog vendor to musicians who can throw. And we're much, much more than that. You can watch it on the news. From the shores of our great city to the towns we love to cruise. We are Detroit. We are Detroit. And we are strong.
Welcome back. A number of things for us to discuss with this morning's roundtable. Let's bring in Nancy Derringer, the columnist from Deadline Detroit, former executive director of the Michigan Republican Party, Jason Rowe, now political strategist for Rowe Strategic. Nolan Finley is the editorial chief of the Detroit News, and Stephen Henderson, of course, is the host of Detroit Today on WDET. I'm assuming I don't have anyone here who's willing to defend Mike Duggan not wanting to debate. I know we're all debate fans, but Stephen, I think when you and I have talked about this a lot, along with Nolan on this program, this is partly the media's fault, isn't it? We have not gotten our act together toward creating a debate commission so that there's a debate whether somebody wants to show up or not, right?
Yes, and it's our own selfishness that's fueling that. This idea that it's worth competing against other media outlets to be the one who gets the debate is the thing that has stopped us from creating this commission. And so politicians have for many years just played us off each other, right? Said, I'd rather go here. I can get the better deal with this station, and that's where I want to do it. We need to take that process away from the control of politicians and put it in the hands of, a neutral kind of organization that is just going to host debates and invite the candidates and expect that they come.
Nolan, as somebody, though, as a candidate who got over 70% in a primary, still the only guy I know who won such a big election as a write-in candidate. I mean, he's a formidable campaigner. Mm-hmm. Would that change? Would he show up anyway if we just held a debate?
Well, he should. I mean, that should be the expectation. And a politician running for office should be willing to stand up, defend their ideas, defend their record. Duggan is spouting this line that he's protecting the people of Detroit from divisive politics. Now, that's just nonsense. He debated Coleman Young. He debated Benny Napoleon. Both were divisive races. And, Anthony Adams is, based on his resume, based on the ideas he's bringing to the table, is not a fringe candidate. He's a credible candidate, and voters should be able to compare and contrast.
Jason, though, you're a political strategist, would you tell the mayor to debate?
Well, I certainly recognize the advantage that he has. I mean, why give oxygen to your opponent? And so I think it's a common political strategy to not elevate the person you're running against, particularly if they don't have the resources to compete with your resource advantage. So I certainly recognize that value. Having said that, I've always felt with my clients, incumbents and challengers, you participate in these because there's an expectation, but I also think it's the one, if few, opportunities that people get to take your measure versus your opponents. And Duggan, is well known, and he shouldn't be afraid to run on his record. And I'm kind of surprised that he would visit this criticism on himself unnecessarily. Yeah.
Nancy, as I said at the top of the program, my cynical worry here, though, is that this has become the incumbent's playbook. This is just how it is. Why give your opponent any air at all?
Did you, I'm sure everybody here has seen the video of the 1973 Belmont Stakes that was won by Secretariat by about a million lengths. I mean, he was out so far ahead that the other horses were just, they were still back in the, the back stretch.
Not in the screen,
and at one point, you can see Ron Turcotte, riding along, and he looks over his shoulder, and it's like, what are you looking for? I mean, you have to know how far out ahead you are. Do you just want to glory in the margin that you're ahead of? And so I guess I kind of feel like Duggan is Secretariat at this point. I mean, he doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want to do. You wish he would do the right thing, and I think the right thing would be to meet Anthony Adams. I think this hate and divisiveness thing is a pretty thin excuse, but you can't. It's his call. I agree with Stephen. That there needed to be a neutral party commission, and get it done through that.
We got to do that. Let's move on to these redistricting maps. We're in the middle of these meetings that are going on across the state as now everybody's getting their first view and a chance to weigh in on what we're seeing here. Stephen, I think going in, we knew there was no way that everybody was going to be happy with what they put forth, especially for a city of Detroit that keeps losing population. But what's your take so far on what you've seen?
So first of all, let's revel a bit in the idea that there is a process here, and there's a public process. We're seeing the draft maps for the first time ever in this process because we have this independent commission that shares the maps. And this is what democracy looks like, right? They put out the drafts, and we get to say, well, we like this, well, we don't like that. We want you to change these things. Here are some factors that maybe you didn't take into account. So it's going the way it's supposed to go. Now, the maps that some Detroiters are upset about, I think, are really complicated, and the things that they're upset about are very complicated. But I just want to throw one thing out there that I think has not been part of the conversation. Is it that these maps are unlikely to produce African-American representatives, which is what the allegation is? Or is it that because of the change in demographics, these maps might more likely produce African-American representatives who are not from Detroit? If you throw Detroiters into districts where now we have more African-Americans living in the suburbs than we do in the city for the first time ever, I think one of the objections secretly is that this makes it a little easier for African-Americans outside the city to win in districts where they would represent city residents. We see that in Congress right now with Brenda Lawrence in a district that's drawn very cynically. These are not cynical maps, but they might produce those same things. And I think that's something we ought to be talking about.
Yeah. Nolan, what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
Well, the maps they've drawn so far, particularly in the congressional maps, are going to be hard on incumbents. You got 9 incumbents who are at risk of facing each other. You can say that's a good thing or a bad thing, but one way or the other, I think we're going to lose 3 or 4 congressional incumbents, and that lessens the delegation's clout in Washington. I've long advocated that Detroit should be mostly one district, given its population. At least 1 or 2 of the maps do that. I think it's a positive thing. But these are headed to court, both on the Voting Rights Act and on the constitutionality of removing congressional draws from the legislature.
Jason, we're going to have some incumbents who will need to move, it certainly appears, if they want to stay incumbents. But we are going to lose one net seat, and the bet right now seems to be that that's going to be that when the game of musical chairs plays out up the north, sort of northwest of us, that it's going to be a Republican seat that ends up getting swallowed up. What's your take so far?
I think that is certainly a possibility. Nathan Gonzalez, who's one of the DC-based political prognosticators, actually opined on Twitter a few months ago that the loss of one seat could benefit Republicans and that Democrats actually would have fared better under Republican-drawn maps than they are under the redistricting commission's maps. One thing that my biggest takeaway from what we've observed in this process is that communities of interest, and I lived in California 10 years ago during their first citizens redistricting, and their clients in Arizona that were subject to citizen redistricting there. Communities of interest's original intent was not dividing up political jurisdictions, cities, counties, townships, to accomplish political partisan ends. And that's actually what we're seeing here. We're dividing up cities like Livonia into 4 different districts. The intent was to keep communities of interest together, i.e. keep cities, don't divide these up into multiple pieces. Yeah. And so when liberals didn't get the outcome that they had hoped 10 years ago, particularly in Arizona, they changed the definition of communities of interest to these ephemeral concepts that we're seeing people litigate now. And when you've got 13 novices doing this very complex process of redrawing the maps with all these new variables that have been introduced, I think it gums up the process. And so while I do think it's a nice parlor exercise to observe the process, we now have invited a lot of special interests into this process. And I went to the hearings in Detroit the other day and got to witness, a lot of people regurgitating union talking points and other political special interest talking points into this process. And I do think that we're probably going to see that gerrymandering wasn't quite as offensive as everyone thought, because we're observing gerrymandering right now just to comply with the Voting Rights Act, majority-minority districts, and some of the other legal obligations that the commission has.
Yeah, it didn't take long for all those interests to rush into the process. We've just got a couple minutes left. I wanted to make sure we talk about the vaccine mandate situation. Nancy, we have watched Henry Ford Health System lost about 400 employees. Now Beaumont just this past week, about the same over vaccine mandates. Now, that's a small percentage of their overall workforce. But of course, a lot of those, the smaller percentages are getting the headlines all over the country right now. What are your thoughts on it? Because Nolan and Stephen both made the point months ago that vaccine mandates by businesses were the only way to move forward on protecting us from COVID-19. What are your thoughts, Nance?
My thoughts on this are cry me a river and enjoy unemployment, because if there is we know these vaccines are safe. If you do have a legitimate medical exemption, you can get that particularly from a health system. I've run out of patience. There was a hearing yesterday in Lansing. I was reading a Twitter thread about it, and it was just one witness after another bringing up falsehoods, exaggerations, outright lies about vaccines. They are safe. We want this. We need to get back to this. I just returned from a month in France. That's a statement I never thought I would say in my life. But
I like it.
And they have a vaccination rate over there of 86%. Yeah. Everyone carries something called a pass sanitaire on their phone. It's a little QR code that you flash, and they check it in restaurants, in museums, in concert venues, anywhere that's kind of a large indoor space. It does contact tracing. It keeps track of all of your testing. It's great. Yeah. And I thought, we have Silicon Valley in this country. Why don't we have something like this? Everybody's walking around with these crummy little CDC cards that don't fit into your wallet and fall apart, and it's booster time. And, people are like, where's my CDC card? I put it somewhere and now I can't find it. It's like, we're doing everything wrong.
I got to jump in. And gang, I have to apologize to the rest of you. Nancy's the only one who gets a word in on the vaccines, because I got to get to a commercial break. Back with more on Flashpoint right after this.
There's a reason you see so many Ford Escapes on the road. It's the same reason so many buy theirs from Roy O'Brien Ford, because we both deliver on value, reputation, and customer satisfaction.
Lease a new Escape SE for just $249 a month, only at Roy O'Brien Ford.
HAP has been part of the Michigan community since 1960, and we're here with Medicare Advantage plans designed just for you. With benefits like dental, hearing aids, over-the-counter allowance, transportation, travel coverage, and telehealth. Call 888-889-2655 to learn more and get your free Medicare benefits guide. Hurry, Medicare enrollment ends December 7th. HAP Medicare Advantage. Made in Michigan, for Michigan.
Hello, I'm Tillman Fertitta, owner of the Golden Nugget Casinos, and I've got some big news. Drum roll, please. I'm pleased to announce our live dealer is now available in Michigan. We're redefining the online gaming experience with Golden Nugget Online Live Dealer, all from the convenience of your phone at goldennuggetcasino.com.
Sign up now and we'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. Visit goldennuggetcasino.com.
Michigan weather can be tough, but the new Ford F-150 is tougher and smarter than ever before. And Roy O'Brien Ford has yours ready and waiting.
Lease a new F-150 Super Crew as low as $279 a month at your hometown dealer, Roy O'Brien Ford.
Local Ford defender Karen Drew. When families' loved ones went missing in the morgue,
we would tell them her name, her description, that she's missing, and they would be like, we don't have anybody here.
I couldn't say goodbye to her.
She exposed the morgue mistakes.
You asked, how did this happen? What did they say?
Held the medical examiner accountable.
This apology letter is a big development.
And followed the money trail.
The defenders went to Michigan Medicine at U of M.
Karen Drew, Sean Lay, the Local Ford defenders.
We are fresh out of time. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Mitch Albom's Heart of Detroit is coming up next, and then it's Meet the Press. And we'll see you back here next Sunday for Flashpoint.